2. My wife's father called me worthless trash in front of the entire family. She deserves better, he declared. I nodded politely and said, "You're right, sir," and left his house alone. The next day, at 10 a.m., he got 3 text messages, one from his lawyer, "The deal is over," one from his daughter, "I hate you," and one from me, "Don't mess with trash." The next morning, I called my lawyer, James Morrison, and asked him to draft 3 documents. A formal withdrawal of investment interest in Nexora Labs, a notice of contract termination for the pending funding agreement, and a confidentiality release that would allow me to reveal my identity as the anonymous investor. "Are you sure about this, Samuel?" James asked during our meeting. "You've spent months on the due diligence. The investment fundamentals are sound despite the family politics." "I'm sure," I said. "Sometimes the best investment is the one you don't make." By noon, I had everything I needed. James would deliver the withdrawal notice to Nexora Labs at exactly 10 a.m. the following morning. I wanted Robert to have a full day to panic before he understood what had happened. That evening, Elena came home around 8 p.m. She'd been staying at her sister's house since the birthday dinner. And I could tell from her posture that she'd been crying. "We need to talk," she said, settling into the chair across from me in our living room. "Okay. My dad called me today. He's worried that he went too far the other night." I almost laughed. "Worried? He wants to apologize. Maybe we could have dinner this weekend, just the 3 of us. Start over." I studied her face, looking for any sign that she understood what had really happened. But Elena was still thinking this was about hurt feelings and wounded pride. She had no idea that her father had just insulted the one person who could save his company. "Elena," I said carefully, "how long have you been ashamed of me?" The question caught her off guard. "What? I'm not ashamed." "You've never once told your father to stop insulting me." "Not once in 3 years. He doesn't mean it, he's just protective. He called me worthless trash in front of your entire family." "You said nothing." Elena's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know what to say. He gets so angry when people confront him. "So, you chose his comfort over my dignity. That's not fair." But it was fair, and we both knew it. Elena had made her choice long ago. Every time she stayed silent, every time she made excuses for his behavior, she was choosing her father over her husband. "I love you," she said, which somehow made it worse. "I know you do, but love isn't enough when you won't fight for it." She left an hour later, and I knew she wouldn't be coming back. Not really. Even if we stayed married, even if we went to counseling, and worked through our problems, there would always be a part of her that saw me through her father's eyes. The next morning, I woke up early and drove to my office. At exactly 10 a.m., I called James to confirm that the withdrawal notice had been delivered to Nexora Labs. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. "Samuel," Elena's voice was shaky. "Something's happened. Dad's company just lost their major investor, $15 million. He's completely falling apart." "I'm sorry to hear that. The lawyers won't tell him who pulled out. They said it was an anonymous investment group. But now they're claiming breach of confidentiality terms. Dad's talking about bankruptcy." I stayed quiet, listening to her breathing on the other end of the line. "Samuel, I know you work in finance. Do you think, could you maybe ask around? See if anyone knows anything about this investment group?" The irony was almost too perfect. She was asking me to help find the investor who could save her father, not knowing that she was talking to him. "I'll see what I can do," I said. After I hung up, I drafted 2 text messages, and scheduled them to be sent the following morning. The first would go to Elena. The second would go to Robert. Both would arrive at exactly 10 a.m. along with a third message from James Morrison. By tomorrow afternoon, everyone would know exactly who they'd been dealing with. That evening, I went through the Nexora Labs files one more time. What I found confirmed everything I'd suspected about Robert Kellerman's business acumen. The company had been hemorrhaging money for 18 months, ever since a failed product launch that Robert had insisted on pushing through, despite warnings from his research team. He'd overruled his own scientists, convinced that his business instincts were superior to their technical expertise. The resulting disaster had cost Nexora Labs their partnership with 2 major pharmaceutical companies, and nearly $3 million in development costs. But instead of accepting responsibility, Robert had blamed the research team, fired 3 senior scientists, and started shopping for new investors to bail him out. What made it worse was that Elena had been one of the scientists who'd opposed the launch. She'd written a detailed memo explaining why the product wasn't ready for market. But Robert had dismissed her concerns as typical overcaution from academic researchers. When the launch failed exactly as she'd predicted, he'd made her life so miserable that she'd eventually quit and found work at a smaller firm. Elena had never told me the full story. She'd mentioned that she'd had some disagreements with her father about research priorities. But she'd framed it as a difference of opinion rather than what it really was. Robert's arrogance destroying sound scientific judgment. I called Elena's former colleague, Dr. Patricia Webb, who'd left Nexora Labs around the same time as Elena. Patricia and I had met at several industry conferences, and she'd always been candid about the challenges of working in biotech. Patricia, this is Samuel Hayes, Elena's husband. I hope you don't mind me calling. Samuel, of course not, how's Elena doing? She's fine, I'm actually calling about something else. I'm researching Nexora Labs for a potential investment, and I wanted to get your perspective on their research capabilities. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Samuel, can I speak freely please? Please. Robert Kellerman is a disaster. Brilliant scientists, solid research foundation, but the man has no business running a biotech company. He treats his research staff like factory workers, and makes decisions based on ego rather than data. Can you give me an example? The neurotropin launch. We had 6 months of testing data showing the compound wasn't stable enough for clinical trials. Elena wrote a 20-page analysis explaining exactly why it would fail. Robert ignored it, pushed the launch forward, and lost the company nearly $3 million when the FDA rejected the application. What happened to Elena after that? Robert blamed her for the failure. Said she was being negative and uncommitted to the company's success, made her work environment so toxic that she had to leave. Honestly, it broke my heart. Elena is one of the most talented researchers I've ever worked with.